Good evening, dear students. In the previous class, we spoke about the importance of prayer in our life. All of us learned to say a small prayer to God. In the prayer, we thanked God for giving us all the gifts. Also, we asked God's forgiveness in our lives. Now, dear children, let us move to lesson 2. Now, lesson 2 and lesson 1 are slightly connected to each other, still, they are different from each other. Lesson 2 is, does God exist? Now, this is a very important question. What do you think, dear children? Does God really exist? Is there really somebody known as God in this world? What do you think? We all can come up with different answers. However, the real answer, the true answer to this question lies in this lesson. So, shall we head forward and learn about this? How many of you are excited and how many of you are curious enough to know the answer to this question? The very important question. Does God exist? Now, dear children, look at this picture over here. What do you see? You see parents and a child. My dear children, we all can see our parents, and that is why we can say that our parents exist, that our parents are there in reality. What about your friends? We all can see our friends, so we can say that our friends exist in reality because we can see them. But what about God? Can you see God? God cannot be seen. So, does that mean that God does not exist? No, my dear children. God exists. Although we cannot see Him, but God definitely is there. So, how do we know it? And why can't we see God? Well, we cannot see God because God is a spirit. God has no body, but God looks after all of us. So, this is so important. Until now, we used to think that all the things that we can see are existing in reality. But what about God? We cannot see God. So, can we see that God does not exist? No, my dear children. God exists. But God does not have a body. Rather, God is a spirit. So that is why we can say that God exists. What about your grandparents? Some of us have seen our grandparents. So hence we can say that they exist. They are there in reality. But some of you may not have seen your grandparents. Does that mean that your grandparents never existed? No, right? Your grandparents did exist. Your grandparents also existed. So, what can we say? We can say that there are some things that we cannot see, but however they exist, they are there in reality. Now, look at the picture over here. If you would have been in school, this example would have been more accurate. However, let me still give you this example. Now, just imagine if you would have been sitting in the school. Now, your school building is made by the architect. The architect plans the entire building, he plans how the different rooms will be, and the contractor completes the work. But when you go to school, do you see the architect over there? Do you see the architect? We don't, right? So, does that mean that the architect did not exist? What is your answer, my dear children? The architect existed, yes, and that is how the building was completed. The building was made. So, similarly, what about the world? This world that we live in, this world is also created by somebody. Whom do you think this world is created by? This world is created by God. So, God is the maker of this world, and this proves that God exists. God is there in real. So, God is who? God is the maker of this world. Now, dear children, I have told you already that this beautiful world has been made by God. God is the maker of this beautiful world. Although we cannot see God, however, everything that is around us, the beautiful nature, the birds around us, everything is a proof that God is there. We can feel God, don't we? We can feel the greatness of God. God is everywhere. We can feel the power of God. God makes us happy. Every moment makes us aware of the love of God. God is always there by our side. So, we cannot see God, and yet God exists. On every side, we can feel the greatness of God. Everywhere, we can see the power of God. Every moment makes us aware of the love of God. God is there with us. God is protecting us. Although we cannot see God, but can you feel God? Yes, you can feel God's love. You can feel God's greatness. You can feel God's power. And the beautiful nature, this beautiful earth, is a living example, or you can say a living proof of God's existence. Look at these beautiful mountains. What do you see? Whom do you think are the mountains glorifying? The mountains, the hills, and the valleys tell us about God. The beauty of these mountains remind us of the greatness of God. What about the oceans, the rivers, the ponds? What do? They speak about God. They tell us more about God. The beautiful water, the beautiful rivers, they tell us and remind us constantly about the majesty, about the power of God. Look at the sky. You may see so many objects in the sky. You can see the moon, the stars at night, and during the daytime, you can see the shiny, enormous sun. Now, all of these show the greatness of God. It tells us how great God is. So, when you look at these in the sky, don't you feel the greatness of God? Are you not reminded of the greatness of God? You are, right? Why? Because God is present everywhere. What about the animals, birds, and insects? What about the birds that fly in the sky? What about the beautiful animals and the interesting insects that are around you? What do they tell you? They tell us about God. So, what do we see, dear children? Everything that is around us tells us about the existence of God. Everything tells us that God is there. Yes, dear children, God is there in our world. God is there in our life. God exists in everything. The beautiful nature reminds us of God's existence. We can feel the presence of God in all things. Isn't it true, my dear children? How many of us feel the presence of God? If you will look at everything that is around you, all things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, the good Lord made them all. Yes, my dear children, this beautiful nature is created by God. You, me, your parents, everybody tells us about the beauty of God, tells us that God is there in reality. Yes, God really is there. So, what can we say from here? If I ask you now, does God exist? Your answer should be yes, God exists. God does not have a body because God is a spirit. However, the beautiful nature glorifies and reminds us about the greatness and his existence. So now, if anybody asks you, can you tell whether God is there or no? So what will you say? Yes, God is there. God is there everywhere. Not just here or there, but God is there everywhere. The beautiful nature around us speaks about the greatness, about the power and majesty of God.